You watched it so many times before, and now you're gonna watch it again. But it's been so many years since you last saw it, and now you show it to your friends, and they're like, "What?
What am I watching?
Why this film?" And I'm joined today by Drew from the Who and Company podcast. Hello!
Hello!
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yay! Very happy to have you, because your chosen movie is 1982's The Flight of Dragons, the IMDb breakdown. A young Boston writer goes back in time into an era where wizards and dragons reign and science is just barely known. Why this film?
This was one of my favorite films as a child, especially animated films. And I was trying to imagine just kind of the dearth of animated films that we had, that children have today. Like the dearth I had and the glut they have today. And I was just kind of looking back at what was available, and this wasn't even a popular film then in the 80s. It was a hard one to come by. Yeah. I think the video store that I got it from when I first discovered it in probably 82, 83 was the only video store that had copies. And so it was one of those films where I would rent it a lot as a kid for sleepovers because my friends hadn't seen it. And this was everything that I wanted, because it was a nerdy dude who liked, let's face it, Dungeons and Dragons, going back in time to face Dungeons and Dragons. And, that was, yeah, literally. But he was also a science nerd, and I was very much a science nerd who was also a mythology nerd as well. So it was sort of my, everything that I loved at that time, and even, let's face it now, put together in a 90-minute film with a soundtrack. I don't want to say a good soundtrack, but it had a soundtrack.
Would stretch to say a good soundtrack. You've got Don McLean at the beginning there.
Right? I know. And the animation of this is, for 1982, is not bad.
I mean, it's gorgeous. It's really lovely. Because it's like Japanese, isn't it?
It is. And that's the thing. It's definitely, and this is, in many ways, my first Japanese film. I think, this is pre My Neighbor Totoro by a couple of years. And so this form of animation, this is before we were getting all of our toys animated into movies. Yeah. And so to have something like this, which is the stuff that I was interested in, was really very cool. But the animation style was very different from everything that I was getting on my local television station for my Saturday morning cartoons or my after-school programming, which was mainly Hanna-Barbera and Disney-related products, and so this was fairly unique. But it doesn't have that anime style. It's definitely a good blending of what would be an American cinema, sort of almost like a Don Bluth kind of. Rankin and Bass, a la The Hobbit from a couple years further. But then there were some other effects that you would see in popular anime. Yeah. From the time period and currently.
Like a strong mixture of East and West. Sort of like Avatar The Last Airbender, but a lot more like old, and by old I mean like 70s and 80s Japanese. Because it really reminded me of, and so does The Last Unicorn, which is also Rankin and Bass, of the 1975 Little Mermaid that a bunch of us randomly had. And I'm obsessed with it. And this animation style really reminded me of that. So instantly I was like, completely comfortable with it. But now you've pointed it out, you're absolutely right. It's not really like anything that's coming out of the Disney studio at this time. And I mean, this was made for TV, so like even with the lower budget TV animation that's coming out, it's still unique. And I think that really works because I think the subject matter is so unique. I refused to look up anything really about this before I went into it, and I was blown away with how imaginative and interesting and individual it was. The like main character, the like person that's coming in from the other world, is not a child. He's like 30. He's like 30, isn't
right?
He's like He's like an author who's like 30.
He's a man-child. I mean, right? I think it's important to say he's essentially a man-child, which is great because Yeah,
but like not obnoxious. Just like just like really enthusiastic. And I think I was getting that because I was like insistent on being on his side, and a more cynical viewer might be like, ew, don't give him any rewards, gross, like, ugh, grow up. But like, it's not. And it was really refreshing to have an adult, because adventures never happen to adults. You either get it when you're 11 or you just need to forget about it. Like, you never reach Fantasia again, you can't reach Narnia again, Susan. You can't, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't happen when you hit that age. But and I think it's really lovely because it's like he was being rewarded for holding out and believing for so long, whilst also having this massive interest in literal science, which is another reason this plot is so interesting, because it's something that I think I've always in my head been like, wouldn't that be fun? And then I've been like, could never work. And this does that. It merges the like proper D&D princesses, knights, dragons, goblins, with like, I suddenly remembered that this theorem exists, and therefore I've quit the magic because science. And it like, but they make it work. They don't make it. Did you find that viewing it as an adult that you could appreciate the mixture of science and magic, or were you a bit more like I don't know, aware of it and like, why didn't that happen earlier, or like, why is this able to exist at the same time? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think they really address this in possibly the most clever way, because you take a man of science, right, who is out of time but loves this world that he's being projected into. So there's no regret. It's like, oh, you're a wizard. You're shrinking me down and putting me in your game board. Oh, we're riding magical dice into the land of fairies. Perfect.
Go for it.
Yes, let's do this. But we then don't watch him inhabit this world, because almost immediately he melds with the dragon. So we don't even see this skinny white guy running around. He's a dragon with John Ritter's voice, which, come on, right there then and there is perfect. But he is a man of science struggling to become one with magic, but it's his separation from that world that allows him to engage the magic, which I think is very cool. I think the balance is really quite excellent. And you mentioned something early on, and we should probably really stress this. I don't think I recognized as a child that this was a made-for-TV movie, even though there are commercial breaks.
Yeah.
This time watching it, it's probably been about 5 or 6 years since I have 13. We have 13 godchildren, and I know at some point in the last 5 or 6 years, I've shown this to some of my godkids, and they were very bored with it, because it's not the narrative that we're used to. Yeah, it's very much
it's very
part of its
odd.
time.
It's not really like anything I've seen before structurally. But carry on.
Well, it's a quest narrative. I mean, it's a quest narrative, but it's very much a video game quest narrative, which is small challenge, big, big boss. Small challenge, bigger boss. Small challenge, bigger boss. Yeah. Small challenge, biggest boss. The end. And it really feels like you're kind of playing a video game in that same way that like Nintendos and Ataris were really kind of popular at that point in time. It's very loosely based on the book. I've never bothered reading the book, even though I've loved this. I've read. You mentioned The Last Unicorn, which was another film that was so influential on me. And I think of the two films, I liked this one better. One, dragons. Two, less singing. I think as a kid, it just really felt like I always wanted to, when playing Dungeons and Dragons, create this group. I love the fact that it's like, who's going to join our team? Well, we've got Sir Neville Smythe. There's this knight who's probably much older than he really should be able to do fighting in a full suit of armor. But you've also got a wolf and an archer and some dragons. You can't do that in an actual game of Dungeons and Dragons, or at least not in Dungeons and Dragons. You can do it in other role playing games because there are better ones out there. But it very much felt like a game, that they were playing a game, and I dug that quite a bit.
It's really, really cool. There's so much to go into. So the book that it's based on, and I completely understand why you wouldn't go for it, because I love DreamWorks' Prince of Egypt, but I'm not going to go and read the Bible. And basically it's the same. It's like the Flight of Dragons is a fictional like mock-you biography, if you will, of like pseudoscience. It's like this person has read the Tales of Earthsea and is like, cool, I'm gonna write a book about how dragons fly and like the science behind dragons and how they work and what they do and how they exist, etc. Like you would read a book about, I don't know, jaguars or something. I don't know, there's a book about jaguars out there. And so yeah, that sounds really like boring to a child because it's like science. It's like a science book. But what's fascinating is the author of the book then is the main character of the movie, which is utterly bizarre. It's like, yeah, it's just really weird. But really, really cool and interesting and different, completely different. And The Flight of Dragons is a book within the film, and he's writing the book. But then
which gives us that amazing moment where we have the library of unfinished books.
Yes!
Come on.
Oh my
as
God.
someone who has sat in front of a computer to write, and I'm sure you're aware of this feeling, wouldn't it be nice to know that you actually finished that book that you were working on or that script?
Literally.
Yeah. The idea and the fact that library could fit in one room is ridiculous because the library of unfinished books is its own magical realm.
Literally.
As a librarian, I can tell you that it would take a lot more than that, but
it's just one tiny moment of brilliant tiny moments in this film. So that's the book that it's based on, and then to sort of flesh out the sort of narrative they've taken from a couple of other books as well that are more sort of George and the Dragon type things.
Yes.
I kind of missed the singing. I like The Last Unicorn has a lot of singing in it, and this one doesn't really. But it's got a great theme tune because all Rankin and Bass do. It's got a great theme tune, and it also felt very Lord of the Rings. It felt like it drew, but then I guess any fantasy does because J.R.R. Tolkien took everything that existed re-fantasy at that time and stuck it all in one book, so anything's going to feel Lord of the Rings.
But it takes a very specific part out of the Lord of the Rings. And so when you have Saruman, who is in a way the rejection of magic and the embracing technology, right? So the idea is you're tearing down the forest using modern equipment and building these armies in the way that one day man will build an army, and they even reference like this idea that Omadon is going to teach humanity to build the atomic bomb to kill one another, because that's how you defeat the thing that is trying to defeat evil, is you get it to kill itself. But there's that idea of that we see in the Two Towers where they're stripping the forest and we're seeing them build machineries, and the goblins are working on that.
Yeah.
That's very much what they're taking from that, which is the idea that there's progress is moving away from a magical realm. And what Carolinus and the other brothers want to do is they want to create a little pocket dimension where magic can still exist in essentially as inspiration for humanity, so that people like Peter will be inspired to write books like Flight of Dragons, which is, it's very circular, right? Because you have to get to a limpid pool of time in order to get all this to work.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, that very hardcore industry versus nature, which we've sort of seen countless times in a lot of fantasy. The villain will often, like, have a computer, whereas the good guy will have, like, a wand made out of a tree or whatever. So we've seen it a lot, and I was quite surprised with the ending where, their main outcome was like, cool, well, we'll just stick the realm of magic under a little bubble, and I was like, wait, what? I thought we, like, saved it and then we would just, like, carry on like this. And they were like, no. It's now, like, he can never come back. He can never visit ever again. None of humanity can, except for the length of a dream or the flash of inspiration. And that's about when I started crying. I was like,
Good.
I'm sorry. What? Why did you have to do this to me? That wasn't where I started crying. That's where I, like, continued crying harder, because up until that point, they'd done some bullshit with my emotions anyway. But that really got me. As, like, a human person, I was like, fucking hell, at least Bastian can, like, return to Fantasia and, like, do some shit before he, like, goes back to being bullied. You're telling me that, like, this is just off limits now, and you did what you came out to do, and that was to just save it for the smallest amount. Oh god, it's really hard as an adult to accept that as, like, a happy ending.
Well, to tie it into a conversation we were having before we started recording, it's very Doctor Who-y, it's very timey-wimey, in that the fact that if he had succeeded and created this land and allowed it to co-mingle, then where's my magic pony, right? Like, where's my unicorns? Where's my everything? They don't exist. Why don't they exist? Well, they exist in books. That's how we can go into it. So I feel like in many ways, it's telling children that you're still allowed to be creative. Your love of science, this is what I took from it, my love of science could still coexist with my love of fantasy, because that realm existed in the past and still maintains its existence because I think about it, because I dream about it, because we have movies that show stuff like this. And that's in itself is actually quite a beautiful message, because it's not lost to us.
Yeah.
We just can't interact it in the same way, a physical way, and nor would we ever be able to. And it's sort of a way for, it feels like that argument where kids are like, well, why don't we have unicorns now? And like, well, they didn't make it on the ark fast enough. Sorry, kids. That's a bit of a bummer, but it gives you an idea that they exist.
Yeah.
They're just not in a place that we can get to them.
Elsewhere. Yeah, it's a very powerful message. It's a very beautiful message. I was just super bummed out because I was expecting, but then I shouldn't have expected that, because the Last Unicorn also ends with quite a bittersweet note.
Right.
Which, again, is a really lovely difference from what the Disney company were putting out a lot, and really important for kids. I always think that kids' movies should be fucking sad and horrifying. Like, it's very important that they are.
I agree, and I am of that age where everything that was coming out at the time was meant specifically to scar children.
Yeah.
I mean, children were not allowed to come out of the theater innocent after a child. So I had never done this before, but today I went ahead and I just looked at the history of animation for the 70s, 80s, and 90s, just to look at what was coming out around the same time. So Rankin and Bass had already come up with the Lord of the Rings and the Return of the King, right? Mm-hmm. So those were the first ones. And of course, we're aware of The Last Unicorn. Disney at this time, the year before, put out Fox and the Hound, which is actually a really traumatic film. So we got Flight of Unicorns. Flight of Unicorns.
I would watch that movie.
It would be Flight of Pegasus. I would too. It would be really difficult. It would be straight down and probably from a plane. So here's what we get. So we get Return of the King in the 80s, 1980, 81 Fox and the Hound, 81 Heavy Metal the movie, not one that I saw as a child. Flight of Dragons, Last Unicorn, 1982, Secret of Nim.
Oh my god, yeah. Don Bluth is like, hello, wake up, kids.
This is horrifying. Yeah.
Every single scene of this movie is going to give you nightmares.
Absolutely. You're going to be afraid of owls forever now.
Owls, mice, rats, you name it.
Like, then we move into Disney's 1985, The Black Cauldron. Right?
John Hurt, his greatest role.
Oh.
Where they were like, maybe we should cut the decomposing bodies, and someone was like, keep a little bit of it in.
Yeah. I remember going to see that in the theaters. I mean, that's a very, very strong memory. I remember most of that day, because after that moment of coming that film, the rest of the day following that is a blur, because it was just so terrifying. And I didn't watch it again for 20 years.
That's sad.
I haven't even read the books. It was just like kind of it hooked
too
in.
Much.
And then immediately following this, there's this massive shift in how animation works, because everything else are animated films to sell toys. I was looking at these movies that were coming out in the theaters. Transformers the movie. Care Bears the movie, Rainbow Bright the movie. We get The Great Mouse Detective, An American Tale, because singing mice are super popular at that point in time. But then My Little Pony, So we have everything seems to be geared at selling toys up and immediately after this point. And then animation movies change. I mean, it really becomes about the merchandising afterwards, and not the art of the actual creation. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, I have many friends who are animators, and I know they put their heart and souls into putting this stuff together. But this is also prior to Disney's golden age, or whatever the new golden age is, right? Because Little Mermaid's, the Renaissance. Yeah.
But
so
Yeah. It I've watched a lot of things about how the integration of toys and TV shows and movies very big in the 80s, where they were like, oh, we'll do this because we can sell shit, and everyone was trying to get in with the fast food restaurants, which were becoming bigger and tying in their toys to it and getting contracts with them and stuff. So that's really interesting that it went from such a dark place. And if you consider the first ever animated movie was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which you revisit that and tell me it's not scary.
It's terrifying.
Very scary.
Do you know what? This is something, this is such a nerd thing that I are you aware of what Disney was going to do before they decided to do Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs?
No.
You can go on YouTube tonight and you can watch the animation of this. Before they settled on Snow White, they were going to do John Carter of Mars. They were going to do a Princess of Mars. And they got the rights to it. They started working on the animation for it. It was all set. That was Disney's, was going to launch with pulp adventure for boys, essentially. Oh. And something fell through. I don't remember if it was the Burroughs household or the estate decided against it. But that got scrapped, and they decided to go with... I think they lost a lot of money on copyright-free fairy tales. And so that was the easy way of doing it. They could just go with something that everyone knew, but they could put their own spin on without having to worry about it. And that's essentially the failure of John Carter 70 years ago. It brought us Disney, the success of Disney.
I never knew that. I'm a little bit ashamed and very intrigued because, of course, 45 years later, they do John Carter, and it's their biggest box office flop. Oh my god! And they were going to ride the whole company on it. That's insane. Just as a member of, if I was a member of the Disney Corporation when they were doing the new John Carter, I would be like, this has to be fucking banging, because the whole company historically was going to ride on this, and if we screw this up, we are going to be a laughingstock. And they're not, obviously, because no one knows that fact, but that's got so many layers to it. My mind is blown. As
someone who thinks that the new John Carter is banging, I love that film with all my heart, because I was raised on those stories.
Yeah.
There's a really good book called John Carter and the Gods of Hollywood. It talks about why the film failed.
Oh my god, I'm going to read that.
There's some switchovers. Basically, it was the old boss left and the new boss came in, and the new boss is like, well, I can't let my first film be a success because it's his work. And so they didn't know how to market it, and there was a royal screw-ups one. The whole point of it is it was on John Carter's 100th anniversary. Why not go, hey, do you guys like Star Wars? Because Star Wars stole everything they liked from John Carter. Hey, do you like this? Because, Disney, they really should have brought in the idea of 100 years of the making, 100 years of the making, 1,000 years in the future kind of a thing. Anyway, that's a totally different discussion.
Yeah. Tangent. We'll come back to John Carter because that's fascinating. The amount of Greek references in this as well. We're not just in a D&D place. We were going to all the brothers. So there's Carolinus. What's his name?
Carolinus, you got it. Carolinus, who is a older, crusty elf, right? So he's clearly the oldest brother of the group, right? And I think the representation in this is very weird, because you were talking about
very weird.
Yes, we have an adventure of an adult, but this is still a movie that takes place, was made in the 80s, so it's going to take a number of years to put together. So let's say late 70s, early 80s, you're going to expect a lot of white people, and almost exclusively white people, but that's not the case. And I don't know if you think whether or not it should have been, or because the representation is a little a little questionable for...
At a glance, the four brothers get together, and you're like, cool. We got Coriolanus, who's like, Coriolanus is Shakespeare. Who's like old troll man, who is like the white man, but like a troll man, like old. He's old. And then you've got, what's the name of the other ones?
So Solaris is the brother of the sea and the stars, who's the super intense black man.
Yeah, yes.
Who is like wild-eyed and gets really passionate really quickly about stuff.
And not played by a black man? Is that correct? Because they hide...
I think that turns out to be the case.
Yeah, because his voice is sort of kept a secret for a while.
His voice is kept a secret. Yeah, so he I didn't know anything about this until like yesterday, and I was looking, and it's like his voice was kept off of the credits for years until and I was like, wow, that's interesting, but I don't know the significance of it. I was like, surely they didn't keep his voice off of it because he's black. Oh no, it's because he's not. Oh, okay.
But then also, I can't imagine that they would be aware enough to know that that was a bad thing. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Interestingly, then you've got James L. Jones, who is black, playing Omadon beautifully, who's like just evil. He's just evil. Like, he looks evil. It like they were like, the one of the ocean, and I was like, beautiful. And is he the one that has the Lunarian dragon? Yeah, he is. He has Lunarian as the dragon, which is the like pink one. And it
was a pink dragon.
I literally put like Lunarian heart and dedicated like a whole space for it, because I was like, that's my favorite dragon. And then we like never see Lunarian again.
Never see it again.
And I was like, fuck. And then we go over to like really questionable land, which I
Lotajal, who is
voiced by Don Messick, who is not of Asian descent at all.
No.
And you can imagine what he looks like. We're in the 80s, and this man is meant to be Oriental, so what he looks like.
Right.
And
he's wearing yellow. And it's not gold, it's yellow.
And this is the thing. Like, if they had done this properly, this would be really interesting representation, because it would sort of be, again, like Avatar The Last Airbender, where you're representing the globe through these brothers and through their dragons as well. That would have been really fucking cool. But no, they sort of half-assed it, and they were like, that'd be fun! And then didn't think anything else through. So you're just there going, sometimes diversity is not a good thing if you're gonna fuck it up. So that's a shame.
Well, Solaris is also supposed to be Arabic. He is a African Arabic sort of a conglomerate, where his style of dress could potentially be Northern African dress. Closer to Egypt, kind of But
I don't think anyone Googled anything extensively. I think they glanced at something and was like, that's cute, let's do that. And didn't think of any implications that may arise from that, because nobody cared.
I'm fully aware that as a white man, when I say this, it's, it could come off in the wrong way, but it could have been, considering the time, much worse. I think it's tone deaf, but not... it's not overtly offensive in the way that racial stereotyping could be.
I don't know that we're in a position to sort of define its offensibility, if that's
true. That is true.
But I know what you're saying. Like, we have seen before this, horrific, like openly racist pieces of animation, and this looks like it's not trying to offend anyone,
right?
By just
I think that's
ignorant, and by just not thinking things through or caring enough to think things through, it suffers, because you're looking at it and you're like, well, this isn't great. Like, I mean, it may not be the faceless people that put up the tents at the beginning of Dumbo, but it's still not great,
right?
So yeah,
and I think actually, without mentioning it, Dumbo was exactly what I was thinking of, which is like one of those things where it's like, that's
bad.
Yeah,
and I mean,
I
they
grew up watching that stuff on television.
Yeah.
I remember when Tom and Jerry's nanny was a mammy, right? And like it's just
yeah.
they weren't even, and they eventually by the 90s were hiding that fact. You know,
Yeah.
I think they made her into a really bad Irish, like a bad Irish voice.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
racism in animation is its own
It's a whole topic
thing
that we are not qualified to talk about. But interesting to point out, and I'm glad you did bring it up because it was a vague distraction for me that I was like, yeah. On the other side of that coin, this movie does not pass the Bechdel test. It doesn't even try.
No!
It has the opportunity to.
Oh my god, it's so bad!
And it doesn't. And it's very, you know, I was watching it and I started like scribbling on another piece of paper. I was like, women in fantasy. And I started doing like my own little side research to be like, this needs to be an essay somewhere. And of course, there's a million essays about it. And you can argue that everything stems from Lord of the Rings and the archetypes that are put forward, women in that, and how there are only certain tropes within fantasy and the women, for some reason, have to stay to their gendered assignments. And you'll always have the warrior woman and the princess, and that's basically what we have here. I was shocked that there was more than one woman in this movie. I didn't see her coming.
I was
She's in it for 5 minutes. But
and they made a point too, which is like, oh, good shot, good man. Oh, you know, the reveal is definitely made specifically for.
Yeah, it's very I am no man kind of thing. But yeah, and like immediately, it's like, I'm in love with you and we're going to marry. So the two women, we should probably actually talk about what we're talking about, so people aren't like, what the hell are they talking about? So the two women that are in this movie are the Princess Melisande, who is, as you would expect, she looks like the Little Mermaid from the 1975 Japanese animation, and she has very, very, very long blonde hair. She has little layer buns under her long blonde hair. She has a very lovely long, like reddish pink dress, and she talks like this all the time, and she's ever so soft and ever so sensitive, and she's just, she's not from the South, I don't know why I'm doing that, but like, she's just your classic princess. Now, she does get to do a lot more than I thought she was going to get to do. She does it unconscious, but that's fine. And then the other one, about an hour and 10 minutes into this hour and a half movie, we get introduced to Danielle, who again is like, she dresses like Robin Hood, which I thought was actually really nice. But she's got this like I mean, to be fair, I don't know what I'm talking about. I loved her character design. She has like long Merida hair. It's like flaming orange. She dresses like Robin Hood. She's brilliant with a bow. She's not like a dick about it. She's really nice. She's like, welcome to the forest. Like, these are these people. Like, what's up? Let's go. Like, we should go to this bar. I know the guy. Or whatever. She's like really cool. But of course, this knight who I really liked. But then he made the fatal mistake of literally being like, the first time I ever met the Princess Melisande, I fell instantly in love with her, and I vowed that I would marry her when she became of age, of course, because he first meets Princess Melisande when he is like 39 and she is about 7. And it's fucking creepy as shit. So then he meets Danielle, who's still like 30 years his junior, and he's like, you've got a vagina, I'm single, I'm in love with you now. And I did...
it's important. It's like, oh, clearly the woman I wanted to marry is no longer available.
Yeah, therefore.
Now I'm interested in you.
Yeah, because they has the whole conversation where he's like, oh, but I fancied the Princess Melisande and I thought she fancied me back. And he's like, oh, that's a shame. At least there wasn't, you know, this is the thing when these kind of things happen in this time frame, because you even though it's trash, you know that was just the done thing, and no one was giving anyone a voice that was going to ever break that mold, or no one had the audacity to break that mold. So it's sort of inevitable that it was all going to happen. It's just a real fucking shame, and it is really like annoying when you're watching it. But at least they didn't fight for her. At least they didn't stop being friends because of it. At least like he accepted it and moved on immediately to the next woman that he's laid eyes on.
It's true. It's 100% true.
It's just all a bit sort of to be expected, re the women in this movie, which was a massive shame, because I was like, we're in such an interesting space imaginatively and such a refreshing story that we really could have pushed the boat out with our women a little bit, but we didn't. We played it safe, and we've got Eowyn and we've got Arwen, and like that's that. But then design
this again,
nice.
they're not trying to hide the fact
Yeah.
that they are just ripping off. I mean, what was the last movie you made? Oh, we made Return of the King.
Yeah.
You know what would be really nice? That made a lot of money for us. Let's just do another version of that.
Let's just do
Cool.
that. It makes sense. I get it. I do. Like, not everyone can be the chain-breaking, glass ceiling smashing, like, you know, progressive woman in film thing that I want it to be, especially in like 1982 or whenever this was. But it's the little things that always get me up. And where is it? Where he was like, well, we've got this guy and we've got that guy. We need another person for our quest because those are the rules. Melisande is obviously out of the question. I was like,
Right!
why?
Right!
Why? No, sorry, go back. Like, why? He's like, obviously, she's out of the question. So who are we gonna have? Who are we gonna have? We're gonna have to literally summon another person from another realm because we can't possibly use this woman. But they don't even explain why. And like, we all know why. It's because you're all fucking sexist. But like, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. She, as I say, she was a lot more involved than I thought she was gonna be. But and then of course he does turn up and he's like, I made her. I made her everything I ever desired in a woman. It's like, you really put some thought into that, didn't you? She's tall, hot, and practically mute. Well done, you.
Yeah, I visibly cringed watching this the other night, thinking about how what you think when it was happening.
Yeah. And it's just because there's no Flight of the Dragons with women. You could argue The Last Unicorn, but when she becomes human, she's as bad as Melisande. Like,
but you still get Molly in The Last Unicorn, and Molly is amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But again, like, of all the characters in that movie, and I know it's based on a book, I think it's that always annoys me, because sure, give me my Arwen and give me my Eowyn, but how about we make the cast 50-50, so we have the opportunity to have a Pippin who's a woman, and Gandalf who's a woman, and Tom Bombadil who's a woman, and just give us the opportunity to have shit female characters and good female characters and feisty female characters and sensitive female characters. Just give us enough female characters so you don't have to stem all of like the like woman. Like, that is the woman.
Right. What's your character? Oh, I'm the woman.
I'm the woman. Like, that's not a character.
I'm the princess.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this... We've essentially discussed the entirety of the movie, except for what happens in it, which is they go on a quest, they fight some mythical stuff, and then they fight some more mythical stuff, and then everybody except for our main character dies.
They die.
They die.
Everybody dies.
Which is, everyone dies. And then he defeats it by reciting different branches of science, which includes sociology, I would add. I was very excited about that. I didn't remember that from the first time I watched it.
It was really fun. I did not see everybody dying.
No.
It was happening, and I was like, huh. And then Danielle died, and I was like, hey! There's only two of them.
And he killed the child character.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your little halfling, your hobbit, who gets crushed pretty quickly. I mean, it shows you what happens when you fight a dragon, right?
It felt realistic. It's like that dragon that sacrifices his life. That again, I didn't see coming, because the first half of the movie, which we haven't really talked about, is that Gorbash, who is the dragon that belongs to Carolinus, gets mixed with Peter, and so it's Peter's voice coming out of and so that's how Peter gets to know the book, because he figures out how to be a dragon because he's taught by this other dragon. And I did not again see that coming. The front cover is him riding on the back of the dragon, and I was like, I see where this is going. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he is the dragon now. And Gorbash, I guess, is just like slipped into the back of his memory, Blind Manor style.
He's sleeping.
Sleeping.
He's essentially, so his consciousness is asleep. Basically, it's his brain in the dragon's body.
Which was so cool. I was like, I don't think I never saw it coming. I've never experienced anything like this before. This is really fun. And then it was just fascinating for them to be like, so you eat the limestone and that mixes, I think I wrote it down, like they have a legitimate, like, thing, how you are a dragon, where it's like, oh god, where is it? It's like, you eat the limestone and it mixes with something and it makes hydrogen, and that's how you fly, and then like a hot air balloon, you have to keep like spitting fire and gas to like lower yourself and keep yourself afloat, and that all was just fascinating. I was like, this is really fucking cool. Like, this is just really fun.
Yeah, and again, as a pedant little science kid who loved dragons, this made so much sense to me, because it was like, oh, this is how this works. I can, it's not just dragons are magic and that's what happens. This is explained. And I think it really set me on this path where I wanted to get scientific explanations for everything that was fantastical. Which is a bummer, because it really kind of loses the love of it's magic for the sake of magic. But it's fine.
But there's still magic for the sake of magic.
It's not exclusive.
Yeah, like in the whole world, there's still magic for the sake of magic. It's just that these are physical beings and this is how they function. Like, it's still, it's like in True Blood where he's like, Suke, just because you know how electricity works doesn't mean it's not magic. And she's like, shut the fuck up. But it's that. It's like, oh, here we go. Calcium plus stomach acid equals hydrogen. I was like, maths and science and magic. I love it.
You can do the same thing by taking strips of aluminum foil and dropping it in Drano and covering it. But, don't do this indoors because it will create hydrogen gas, and that is entirely very explosive.
Is that the same as putting a Mento in Coca-Cola?
No, you're getting carbonated air at that point in time. But this is far more deadly.
Science.
I had, growing up, I had this movie, and I also had something called the Anarchist Cookbook, which allowed me to make very dangerous experiments, which I used as a child, and I'm really lucky to have all my fingers.
Yeah, oh boy.
I was just searching for a way to make fireballs, honestly.
That's understandable. I would just pick up sticks and just will things to happen.
Yeah.
Manifestation at a young age. But yeah, just to jump back to these brothers, the C1 mentions Neptune, so it's not like these brothers are the Greek gods themselves. It's more that they coexist, similar, I felt, to the wizards in Lord of the Rings, where you got the blue ones and the brown one and the white one and the grey one and kind of thing. And so I thought that was really interesting, how we have a mixture of these mythological things together. And then, of course, they cut to James Earl Jones' castle, and it's like a lightning crash and like a huge black, like Maleficent lives there, basically. And then you go in and he's like, got two like weird dog things chained to him, and he's like, and I was like, oh, I think we found our villain.
Right. Can I just say, and this is, most of Rankin and Bass's stuff really feels like it should be airbrushed on the side of a van in the 70s. Like, it has has a black light structure to it. It feels, it's over the top, the grotesque. There's Omadon, who's our James Earl Jones bad guy, has a real BDSM quality to him as he wears his kind of like hood and his like he's hunchbacked and a snarled, he's got fangs sticking up, and he's got that great voice. And I just watched it. I watched this for him more than anything else, because his lines, and like Carolinus is like, I summoned my 4 brothers, which are Solaris of the sea and stars, and Lotajal of the wisdom, and of course, Omadon, who is the seducer of darkness and the devil's domain. And you're like, wow.
Yeah, like, oh boy. He was like, ruler of Hades and all things dark. I was like, do we want to invite him? Like, is that a good idea? Do we want to do some security checks on the way in, maybe? Because the other two seem fine. Even his dragon, you know how they're pets? They always go to the pet store and they're like, do you have anything with, like, glowing red eyes and, like, talons? And they're like, this way. And they take them to the, like, evil pet for your dark deeds section. And you're like, oh my god, amazing! And it's like, do you want a terrifying raven that, like, spits poison? Do you want, like, a horse that looks like a skeleton? Do you have any dragons? Yeah, we got dragons. There's this lovely pink one or this nice green one with, like, a wig on him. And he's like, no, I'm the evil one. I need something a bit more intense. And they're like, how about red? And he's like, that 100% goes with my aesthetic. Sign me up. And he literally turns up and you're like, that man has not very good intentions. I don't think we should be talking to him on a, like that's, no, he's bad. Like, he doesn't get an opinion.
What I love, too, is there's rules to magic. And it's like, why would we invite, like, they literally say, why would we invite him? It's like, well, the Temple of All Antiquity says that in order for us, the four brothers, to meet, it has to be the four brothers. We can't just have three brothers and just mention it, you know? And it's like, he's the bad guy. Now, Lothajar, our Asian brother, is the brother of wisdom and light. And you've got, you know, sort of the same side of that coin, of course, is we've got Amaddon, who's the brother of darkness. And then you have a brother of the heavens and the depths. And you have Carolinus, who's very much the wizard of the earth. And so you're kind of getting, like,
the elements.
You've got, you've got your elements. It's almost like, sort of like a vertical hierarchy where you've got the heavens and the sky and the land and the ocean and then evil. Yeah,
literally. I think at one point he literally says, like, the realm of Hades or something.
The devil's domain. Devil's domain. He is the lord of the devil's domain. I was like, wow. Yeah, okay.
And I love that. I love it when Home Alone is the best thing for this, but I love it when movies take the time to be like, you may think this would be a bad idea, but here's one sentence as to why it's not. Like, here's why we have to do this, because obviously we have to do this because of the plot, but we're going to take the time to just give you a small reason as to why we're not stupid and we have to do this. So I did really appreciate that. And the way that they were like, we can't go on the quest. Other people have to go on the quest. And it's like, fine. The Tree of Antiquity, the burning bush of God. Like, what is that about? What like, I didn't really understand that. Is that meant to be like a heavenly power? Is it meant to be the source, like the Earth's core? Is it meant to be... what is it?
I think Carolinus is a druid. I think the idea is that he is a member of the druid tradition without specifically saying so. And since trees play, especially the oak, plays such an important part in that sort of ritual, I think that's sort of where we're just drawing analogies, really more analogs, really more than anything else. Do they all
have their own version of the Tree of Antiquity that they can go and chat to when they need some advice? Because it felt like they all needed to consult the one earthbound piece of knowledge, and he would, like, message back and be like, oh, so the tree told me this, and they were like, okay, cool. None of them was ever like, well, the conch of antiquity told me this, and the the, like, demon person of antiquity told me that.
I don't know. I think one of the things too is these four characters exist in all times at once. They frequently will mention the future, the past, and the present as if it is the present. Because they're going to say, oh, he's going to be the one who does this. You know, man will be inspired by this and call it radio and television. I'm like, how do you know? Oh, I mean, it's perfect. Like time is very much fluid in this. That's why you have a limpid pool of time, and you can take your silver acorns and toss it in there.
It's so cool.
It's so cool.
It's so cool.
After 500 years or 800 years or whatever it is, I should know a limpid pool of time when I see one. There's so many great quotes that you could use in this. I love this just for Amaddon's quotes. The stuff that he says in my brain, I wish I could sound like James Earl Jones.
Oh my God.
Just in general. because you know no one was having as much fun as he was in the recording booth when he gets to see, like, can you not feel the world turning in my direction already? You know, it's kind of a thing you're just like, it's so much fun. It's so, I know, he's just chewing the scenery in this so much, and it's just
But it really works, I think, because we're already on board with, like, a man has melded with a dragon, and we're having some flying lessons. It's like, while we're here, we may as well cut to him in his castle, where he's like, I'm evil.
Yeah, he might as well be a kind of a Jabba the Hutt-esque character. It's kind of surprising that he doesn't have a minion that's, like, chattering and laughing with him, but he's got the giant... And James Earl Jones voices both Omadon and Briox, his dragon, so he's doing both voices, so he's just changing it slightly because it's essentially the dragons are their familiars. Meanwhile, the actor who's doing Carolinus is not doing the voice of the dragons.
No. Really funny little touch that Carolinus has, oh my god, has like a stomach ulcer. And Peter's just like, have some milk.
Yeah. But alas, Gorbash has eaten every dragon within the last 20 miles. Oh, father, waste a little magic.
Oh, it's so lovely. Like, the dialogue is so great. Just to sort of go back to Melisande and what she gets up to, she sort of goes into, like, a coma slumber, where she's basically, like, the news reporter on what the Quest are up to. Like,
she's doing Twitter updates. But what I love is Carolinus did not realize that this is a power she had. Solaris had to, like, send a magical... It's like, I don't understand. My magic's not working. Oh, it's not that my magic's not working. It's that my brother is interrupting the broadcast to... We interrupt this broadcast to remind you that you're... And remember, too, it's not his daughter. It's his adopted daughter, which... This is the first time I've really been inspired. I kind of wanted to read the book because she, at one point in time, when she has the sand mercs crawl into her brain, accuses him of killing her parents. And I'm like, I want to know more about that tasty little tidbit.
Yeah. That was so bizarre, and it was never really explained. And I don't know where... Because The Dragon and George is the 1976 fantasy novel it sort of gets its main shebang from, the plot-wise. And I don't know if she's a character in that, and if they explain, and, like... if it's a misunderstanding on her part, or if, like, he genuinely did kill
She's
them.
got the brain fever, so, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, wouldn't that be great if he was like, I can see into the future, and I know that I'm going to need you, but in order to need you, I'm going to need to get rid of your parents, and so for the greater good, I'm going to need to kill them. Maybe that's too much for, like, kids, but, like...
But that's exactly how I would have written it if I were writing this story.
Exactly.
I love a good love a good manipulative wizard.
Yeah.
Where no one's... It's like, well, Omadon wants progress, right? Like, Omadon wants... As humanity who wants our technology, Omadon's really our guy. Like,
this is the thing. It's really funny whenever they have this industry versus magic thing, because you're technically like... Omadon would be right behind the new iPhone. He'd be like, what's up, kids? Take TikTok.
It would be an O-phone, though, at that point in
time. Whereas, like, I don't think us as a society, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I think we're trying to get closer to that, and the pandemic has weirdly helped. Trying to get closer to that one with nature, more magic in our lives, more time to just sort of, like, reflect and be. But you're right, like, we watch these things when we're kids, and then you grow up into the real world, and you realise that you're in Omadon's land. You're in Saruman's land.
Yeah.
And technology
Yeah, they won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like...
Yeah, technology
bummer.
won. Yeah.
But then you're not
Omadon wasn't there to work it.
Because you're able to recover a VHS copy of a movie that's been uploaded onto the internet in brilliant, like, ability, and you can watch it at any time of day as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection, and you're like, maybe technology isn't so bad. But then you're also like, I would still like a unicorn, though.
Yes. Or a manticore, or something.
Not a manticore, that would be terrifying.
Oh, but come on, a smile within a smile within a smile. I love it.
No.
I wouldn't have to worry about my neighbors. Actually, I love my neighbors. They're great. This has got some neat creature effects in it. All the baddies are grotesque. Though I will say that all the mundane characters are also grotesque. All the human beings, none of which are female, all the male human beings are real. None of them are lookers. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the main character, the main human, has such a bland face with like a weird nose, and I just kept looking at him like, you were the design that they went with? Were they like rushed for time? Did they like base you on someone that then they hated and like changed? Like, what is like? And I know previously we've had. Thing is, we've had like Bilbo and Frodo as heroes before, who were meant to look a bit curious, but Aragorn always looked like he was meant to be hot, and so did the prince from The Last Unicorn. So it's really weird that he here looks so unfinished.
He's a nerd.
Yeah,
he's a nerd, and that's the thing too. Is he's a nerd, and in many ways. He's not an interesting character until he becomes a dragon.
It's very true.
I mean, and it's also, we don't love him for his looks. Melisande doesn't choose him because he's handsome. She chooses him because the plot needs her to.
Exactly.
But,
like, genuinely, why does she choose him? Because she literally is introduced to him with like, oh, you're the one that my guardian said will save us all. And then he does save them all. And she's like, perfect, that one, please. And it's like, do you even know him? She's like,
no. It's worse than that. It's worse than that because they hook up that very night.
Oh my god.
Because when the spell combines the two of them, because like they're snuggling up outside the lake when Brioch comes and steals him, and the spell combines them. It's like, Gorbash. She's like, what? Melisande, why are you acting like you don't know me? We kissed. And she's like, oh, Peter! And she thinks he's Sir Peter. Like, immediately, Carolinus is like, hey, listen, I'm going to call you Sir Peter, just because,
That's...
And Peter looks at Carolinus and goes, she's everything I want in a woman. And it's like, you haven't talked to her yet, dude.
Literally, she hasn't said a fucking word to you yet.
She hasn't said a word. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It just... She's just there to be moved around. Which is a shame.
But she's a psychic princess. A magic psychic princess.
Which I really feel could have... Because then she's like, I'm a magic psychic princess that's clearly fairly integral to this realm. At least, like, I would be, as one of the only 2 women in this realm, a really cool inspiration for humanity to perhaps write more about women. And then she's like, nah, fuck them. I'm gonna go to Earth. I'm gonna do a... What is she even doing? What am I thinking of?
Ella Enchanted? Is it where she jumps to the Disney realm into the...
Oh, yeah, Enchanted. Yeah, I'm doing an Enchanted. That's where I've decided
not Ella Enchanted,
to,
just
like...
Enchanted.
Still 2 great movies, though. Where she's like, I'm going to stay here now. I'm going to go hang out with him. And it's like... Think about that. For a second. It's like the Last Starfighter all over again. She's like, I can't remember if she does go with him in the end. I think she does. And it's like, you have no idea what it's going to be like. You have no idea what your job is going to be. You have no idea how you're going to make an income. You have no idea that those things are even important and are going to be for your literal survival. Your complete way of life is going to be upended. All so you get to spend time with this person who may leave you in 5 years. Like, I doubt anyone leaves anyone in the magic realm.
It's true. I mean, the idea that we don't have to think about that as children watching that because it's a happily ever after story, and so hopefully that continues into the narrative. But I do as an adult watch this and went, oh, she is going to be so unhappy when she leaves that pawn shop and gets stuck in traffic for 30 minutes on their way to the apartment that he lives in with their neighbors who are like, they can hear everything happening on the other side of the wall.
Literally. And he's gonna have expectations of her that she probably doesn't even know is a thing.
Oh yeah, like, hey, I'm sorry, we don't know how labor is handled without the use of magic, because I imagine that magic-assisted childbirth is probably a lot more preferable to the...
Is she even comfortable having sex? Like, do we know that? Like...
I don't think it... I mean, you know, that's a conversation that really, if we start looking, like, think about like the Little Mermaid, or like, who even knows if magical anatomy even can be combined? She is not a human. Yeah. We don't know if she's a human or not. But it also doesn't matter in the context of this story, because you know, well, and it does to me too. But like, you know, and that's one of the things where it's like, yeah, as adults we can't help but think of that kind of stuff. But as kids, like,
kids are just like, a prize, well done for you. You get a nice trophy and a woman. I
don't remember if she... I think... Is she one of the game pieces? She's not one of the game pieces. She is in the original thing, which is really terrifying.
Which is why it's like, even worse when he's like, I made her. Like, it's not your fault that she doesn't love you, Knight. She loves me because I literally invented her and I made her everything I love in a woman, a.k.a. mute, tall, blonde, hot. And it's like, you're a real charmer, aren't you? I did like that he wore glasses, and I knew that was to go along with his like nerd persona, but then I didn't like how he essentially groomed a princess into leaving her safe hometown and family and friends for a guy she's known half an hour.
That's the problem with all fairy tales, when you have your fairy tale princess who meets their prince and they're going to live happy.
Though. That's the trouble. Like, when you look into fairy tales, and I'm being pedantic now, but like, when you look into fairy tales...
I'm sorry, I should say Disney fairy tales. Yeah, that's what I meant to say, was Disney fairy tales.
The adaptation, like, but like, if you actually look into a lot of folklore and ancient stuff, there's really cool women and characters and scenarios and stuff that have just been pushed down because patriarchal societies and stuff, and I think it's just time that we started resurrecting cool, strong people that are doing shit for their own shit. Like, you never... maybe I'm wrong, maybe you'll correct me immediately, and I hope you do, but I cannot think of a fairy tale or thing where it's like, the whole story is that a woman is doing something with the help of a bunch of other women, and then nobody marries at the end. It's just women.
Are we talking about classic folklore and fairy tales?
Anything at all.
I feel like there is something, and it might be the Native American folklore, but I'll have to look through my books. Mm-hmm. I don't think you're going to find anything out of the Andrew Lang collection or Grimm that falls along those lines. No. But no, you're right.
Especially nothing that's been adapted into any sort of modern media. The closest we're getting is Elsa, but we still have to have Anna's subplot of getting married and stuff.
Well, with Brave, marriage is on the table, and the plot of that is it's about two women's relationships with each other. No one gets married, and she's,
That's true. I forgot about Brave.
And no one thinks less of her because of that. Mm-hmm. And that's, such a great film. And actually, another reason to love Brave is it brings the terror back into children's programming, because the Devil Bear in that, who was a man who was transformed, an evil man who was transformed specifically,
which
right?
Is so scary.
So you've got the she-bears who you're rooting for, and the evil male demon bear. No, it's a great film, but like, I went and saw it opening night. One of the only times I can say I've done that with a Disney film, because I'm very anti-Disney in general. But the screams from the children was so delicious. So delicious.
Yes,
and I was like, that's what I want.
On your screams. Yeah. Yes, that's so good, because obviously I was quite a lot older when that came out, so I didn't even consider, but it's like the cousin of the bear from Fox and the Hound, which was always petrifying. So I'm glad that it made children scream.
I'll go one more. Moana. Moana I don't believe ends. It's
Oh,
women.
yeah.
It's the grandmother assists the granddaughter, who then helps the female essence of an island heal itself. There is no love interest at all.
Yeah. You're right. I think if Maui was a woman.
Oh my God! Yes,
Maui would be. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I want something that doesn't feel the need. And Brave, you're absolutely right. Brave does it.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel the need to introduce a man.
Yeah, I think Brave is the closest thing you're going to get. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
if anyone who's listening to this, because while we do have male characters, they are. The purpose of the male characters is to highlight the fact that she doesn't need the male characters. Mm-hmm. And while the mother is being motherly, and the female characters are being motherly or sisterly, none of them are defined by that role.
Yeah. And
none of them are limited by that role, which is super important.
Yeah.
So.
No, I do need to rewatch Brave. That is a good.
Yeah, I kind of want to do that too now. Yeah. Actually.
Yay.
Any final thoughts on this? And I'll just kind of stress this too. Like a year or two after this came out, and I started watching this on VHS. Saturday morning cartoons had a animated Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh yeah.
Which I was a big D&D nerd at the age of 7, which is when this came out. No, this would have come out before then. So maybe this helped inspire me. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was 7 years old. And so this is one of those things where it was again very similar to what I loved and inspired a lot of the games that I played early on, especially before I knew how the rules worked. But have something like this, and then to have like D&D, which did have 2 women, or I guess like in the adventures, mm-hmm. which was actually quite cool.
How many people in the quest altogether?
In Dungeons and Dragons? Yep. Oh boy, I want to say 7 in the group.
And so 2 of them were women.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, well, 3 if you include the unicorn.
Oh. Yeah.
But I will say that this is also the D&D animated series was the first representation of a person of color that I remember seeing in animation on a regular series.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
as like main character.
Yeah.
That's really cool and really depressing.
Oh no, horrible! I know, horrible. And that's the thing is like I when I talk to a lot of the teens that I work with at the library back when I actually could work with them in person, and we talk about representation in any form of media. I have to say it's come such a long way, and it's still terrible, but it's like compared to when we were kids.
Of course, yeah. Slowly getting there. It's
so slow. And well, it feels like in the last 5 years or so, there's been this fantastic jump in representation just across the board, not just as far as race or gender, but like also, shows like Steven Universe, where we're kind of exploring more complex issues. It's so nice to see diversity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've never had a problem finding representation of myself in anything. I am a blonde white guy.
And it's that though, isn't it? It's like it's finding the character that you want to align your sensibilities with, and when you're given one character to inhabit absolutely everything about that gender, you're not given that opportunity, and no. It's very limiting. And I always obviously refer to women because I am a woman. I'm she/her, and that's what I relate as, and that's what I look for, and that's what's important to me. But obviously when we talk about this, we of course mean all races, all cultures, all sexualities. Like, all of those things are important, all of those things are necessary. If you're going to have a team of people, it needs to encompass all of those things, because and the bigger the better, and the more better for the child to be able to choose what kind of person they want to be and who they want to play in the playground, and all of these important things. And it is lovely that more so now that's happening and it's getting out there. And the way we get to that point is not just by throwing in these characters because we feel they ought to be there. It's by filling up the writer's room with those people and having their narrative
100%.
told.
Yeah. Tokenism it's I mean, tokenism is not the answer. You can't just say, well, we included someone of color in this production. It's like, yes, but how are they represented?
Yeah.
It's like, congratulations. You can find someone who looks like you, but it's...
Exactly. And it's everything's so diverse as well. You can't just have like one person that encompasses that in the boardroom and like feel like you've ticked a box either. It's like all these women will have different experiences, walks of life, like they need their representation, and the way to do that is just keeping your writer's room as diverse as possible and changing it up and like, and it's not that we want to get rid of the white man. It's that we just want a look in as well. And like, I think that message gets distorted a lot where, I mean, it's on Twitter, which is like a garbage fire anyway, but yeah.
I mean, like, we're halfway out of the dark. We're maybe like a third of the way out of the dark, a quarter of the way out of the dark from 2020, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I can breathe again. Like, I think the audience should know that we attempted to record first on inaugural day, on the inauguration, and it's like, oh no, we really should watch this historic event,
it's
please.
Cathartic. Thank you much for coming on and giving me this wonderful movie that I now want to hunt down a DVD copy of. It's all on YouTube, and it's also all on another like archive website that I watched it on. But I want the DVD. I want the Blu-ray. Is there even a Blu-ray?
You don't want the Blu-ray.
Oh.
So I have a copy that I bought off of eBay about 15 years ago, and it's just a photocopied dust jacket on there of like the old VHS copy. Yeah. And it's a computer disc, and it'll play. I don't remember what the technical term is. I'm tired. It'll play on my DVD player because it's region free. But the Blu-ray, apparently, and I know I was talking earlier about how I'm not caring about aspect ratio, apparently they cropped it in such a way that it's cut. And so there's no special features. There's nothing. I did a little bit of research. Apparently, in 2015, they announced that they were start work on a live-action version of Flight of Dragons.
I read that, and then it got cancelled?
A lot of things got canceled. I think right now, fantasy is not as popular as it was after post-Lord of the Rings.
Well, no, I think post-Lord of the Rings fantasy was having a heyday. I think it was when fucking Game of Thrones set itself on fire and threw itself down a hill, knocking everyone who had followed it so ardently over. And as we picked ourselves up, also now on fire and covered in shit, we looked back at Game of Thrones and we were like, you were the hope for the future. You were bringing fantasy back and making it relevant. You were taking what Lord of the Rings so kindly gave you and building on it. But you didn't bother to finish the roof, and now everything's collapsed. I'm still very upset about it.
Just like, is it Land's End? No, what's the I've watched it, but I'm not really that big of a fan. What's the Landing? Something Landing. What's the building that collapsed on everybody?
Yeah,
I think.
the like Red Keep in King's Landing.
King's Landing? Yeah. King's Landing. That was it.
Just like that, we're picking ourselves out of the rubble. Like, what were you thinking? How dare you? So I think if Game of Thrones had been as good as it started, perhaps people would have been considering fantasy films. But at the moment, they seem to just be vague cameos. They brought back Shark Boy and Lava Girl for a Netflix thing. They did sort of like Ready Player One type stuff, and like it's just sort of there in the background being like, hey-o.
Here's your pitch. We just went through 2020 where everyone's like, science isn't a thing. Oh my God. So now we get to actually root for science versus fantasy and fake news.
Now's the perfect time to bring this back. Oh my God. It's really interesting, and I don't think you can make a full adaptation from what I understand the book to be. But yes. I think there's enough out there that you can pick ideas from that work And, you know, if someone can pick up the King's Damosel and make Magic Sword Quest for Camelot, and someone else can pick up Notre Dame de Paris and make Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, you can do whatever you want. What did you just make a face of?
Sorry, I made that face because just that year, those couple of years of Disney, which also led to Pocahontas, it just,
Okay, so The Hunchback of Notre Dame is amazing, and I won't hear a word against it.
I won't say a word against it.
Okay, good. But yeah, obviously Pocahontas is problematic, to say the least. Downright insulting. Very offensive. Poor attempt. Not even an attempt, really. Just Jeffrey Katzenberg doing what he does best. Being shit. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Someone's going to be listening to this podcast going, I just wanted to listen to about Flight of Dragons. Why are you attacking everything that I love?
Why are you attacking Pocahontas?
Why can't I just be a white man?
I'd not met anyone that had heard of or talked about this movie before, so it was always on my list of like animations that I definitely need to see. And it would just keep getting pushed down for whatever reason. While I was like, Kirikou instead. But yes, I'm very.
You can't find it
now. Yeah, I think that's
so
what
glad.
it is. It's really difficult to come across. As I say, it's on YouTube, but it's on YouTube in like 2-minute segments. You know, where you're just like,
oh, that's the worst. No, you can get it on DVD via whatever platform you can get your DVDs on. I hear the transfer on it's fine. There's nothing special about it, but if you just want to watch it on DVD, that it exists.
Nice.
There is no soundtrack available by itself. I have looked a couple of times. I mean, people have collected it, and you can listen to it on YouTube, but you're not going to be able to buy a disc of it.
Yeah.
I had the laser disc of it at one point in time.
Nice.
Back in the day. Yeah. Because I'm that old!
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what a laser disc is. I was
That's
like,
fine.
I'll take your word for
gonna...
that.
It's the size of an LP.
Oh,
It looked like a record, but it played movies. And then halfway through the movie, you had to eject it and flip it over onto the other side. It's essentially the predecessor to a DVD.
Nice.
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it had its moment. In the same way that Betamax had its moment, and 8-tracks had their moment. You know, for a while, people were like, this is clearly superior.
This is the future.
Oh, this is the future. The future is here now.
I feel bad for VHSs.
Oh,
really
the hipsters have really started collecting VHSs and mixtapes again. So
Nice.
they're still there. You can the used bookstore that I buy my movies and stuff from back in the day when I used to inhabit it, they still sell the Disney clamshells. So, there are people... the libraries, a number of the libraries I've worked for have still had them because especially when our patrons in the more rural communities who don't have DVD players or didn't at the time were still using VHS.
Yeah,
so,
that's
they still have a place. They just take up so much space.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. But then so do DVDs if you're switching to streaming. You're suddenly like, that's a whole wall in my house I can get back now. And you're like, but it's pretty.
How will people know what movies I like?
Exactly. How will people be able to judge me upon entering my house?
It's like, my God, you have a lot of David Cronenberg.
Yeah. Maybe I should leave.
No, stay.
Yay! What would you like to plug?
I mean, Flight of Dragons sounds like a good thing to plug, but if you like Doctor Who and you like podcasts, then I have a podcast about Doctor Who and television called Who and Company, where we invite guests that we know through Doctor Who, so writers, actors, directors of the show, and then we just talk about their works, Doctor Who, and how their relationship with it, but we have them bring a television program that isn't Doctor Who, and we talk about that, because we know Doctor Who's not the end-all and be-all of their fandom. So we talk about them. We're about to start our 5th season of that, and we've got some great guests lined up, and yeah, it's pretty nerdy, but it's also really chill.
That's really cool that you get like actual people on.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really cool.
Well, 2020 was a landmark year for guests on podcasts because they got nothing else to do. They weren't traveling anywhere, so they were really I learned how to get in touch with agents, and I talked to people, and I was like, listen, do you want to do a podcast? We'll talk about, we had one of our favorite companions from the classic series come on. She's like, you know what I really want to talk about? I want to talk about Stranger Things. And I was like, let's talk about Stranger Things. Uh-huh. Season 3 had basically just come out. We sat and we talked about Stranger Things for 90 minutes. It was great. Like, and it's actually a fun one. I would recommend that one, especially if you're in the UK, because we discuss what a UK version of Stranger Things might be. Ooh. UK shows from the 80s that could be used, because, you know, clearly Stranger Things is very much an American program. As much as I love it, it was nice to get a different approach by that.
Yeah.
So that was a fun one.
That sounds really fun. That sounds really cool. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to check that out. That sounds amazing. Yay! Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Please come back on again.
Well, can I pitch an idea for another episode then?
Yes.
I would like to come on and talk about Explorers from 1985.
No one's done that. I want to say one of the Phoenix brothers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the Phoenix brothers is in there. There's a couple of very famous young actors before they became super famous, but it's part of the kids on bikes. Speaking of Stranger Things, it's part of the kids on bikes genre, which I have a real appreciation for. You know, a la Goonies and Stand By Me and E.T. and all that stuff. Though I hate E.T. But
I thought it was more Flight of the Navigator, because I've done that before.
It's a little of both. Oh, it's a shame. Flight of the Navigator was one that I enjoyed as a kid, but I haven't seen it since I was a child.
Rewatch it and let me know what you think.
Yeah,
but Explorers keeps coming up as like, if you love this, you'll love that. And I've been poised, waiting for the person that's going to be like, Explorers.
It me.
Because I'll be really interested to watch it. Because again, like, briefly glancing at it, I'm like, that's not for me. But often I'm proved wrong, and I
haven't watched it in 20 years, so
it'll be really fun.
It'll be a rediscovery.
I could come on and be like, my new favorite movie, hello. That's why I love it. I've been waiting for someone to pick it, because I'm like, I'm interested to see what that one's about.
Well, there we go.
So yeah, you're scheduled in. I'll be in touch about that. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see you next time on Why This Film.